Welcome to Anselmo Academy of Music and the Arts, and we are live on Facebook and sending everyone greetings from New York. Today we present pianist and fortepianist, solo and chamber musician, and esteemed pedagogue Audrey Axinn in a dialogue, and then also some pre-recorded lesson excerpts that we have. Hello and welcome, Audrey.
Hi, Vera. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, it's our honor. And please tell us a little bit about the piece that we just featured.
Well, that's the first bagatelle by Beethoven from the Opus 126, six bagatelles. It's really the last piece, the last opus for piano. And it's very, I love it. I am in love with this piece, and I think it has this incredible quiet contemplation, but also this ecstasy to it that I just really adore. And it's so that performance, for anyone who was wondering what instrument was that, it was on an original piano from about 1830. So really just almost exactly from the time that Beethoven was composing the piece. And it's called a Graf piano. The builder was Conrad Graf.
Amazing. We'll talk to Audrey shortly. We'll feature her bio, her pictures, and her videos. And but first, we have brief announcements from Anselmo Academy. Our winter enrollment is open and ongoing for private lessons and group classes at multiple local schools. And we offer lessons and classes throughout New York and New Jersey. Please connect with us at our website, anselmoacademy.org. Our seventh music competition has live auditions in early March 2025, and we invite all budding musicians and talented artists, of course, to participate. We have an early bird application deadline of February 1st, and that don't require any video submission. And then the final registration deadline is February 15. We also organize annual student showcases where Anselmo Academy students, along with many guest students from local teachers, come and perform. And so you see a flyer. We will start promoting this and connecting with local teachers for those who would like to feature their students. These events will be on April 5th and April 6th. 2025 on the Upper West Side. Anselmo Academy is a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we specialize in organizing group classes at local schools. This past academic year, we have served over 2,000 students a week through many partnerships we have with local schools teaching group instruction. Our programs vary from general music education to small group classes in piano, guitar, violin, musical theater, choir, acting classes, and more. If you know of a school that doesn't have a music and arts program, please do let us know so that we can reach out and possibly arrange for some programming for that school. Quite a number of our programs are subsidized by Anselmo Academy due to generous donations that come from the board of directors throughout the year, and some of the donations that we receive from corporate businesses. Please subscribe to our social media and our two e-newsletters that you can find at anselmoacademy.org homepage. And these two newsletters are academic newsletter and then another newsletter that we call On Stage. And along with the uh, inside updates about Anselmo Academy. We do have guests just like Audrey is today, who talk about their musical path, their career interest, and we feature performances, dialogue, and more of those artists that you might find very interesting. Wonderful. Can we please have Audrey's profile picture on the screen as I go through her bio, please? Wonderful. Uh, Audrey Axinn is pianist and fortepianist, and she's a passionate chamber musician and solo artist. She has developed a specialization ornamenting the music of Mozart and Beethoven. She has collaborated with luminary partners, including Monica Haggett, Eugene Fodor, Jamie Laredo, Daniel Heifetz, Rufus Miller, and Jesse Blomerk, and venues including Carnegie Hall Stern Auditorium, Weil Hall, Caramore, Barge Music, the 92nd Street Y, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Boston Early Music, and the Edinburgh festivals. She performed at the Shanghai Oriental and Tianjin Grand Theaters and multiple Taiwanese venues as a member of the Tianjin Juilliard Ensemble. Dr. Axinn earned a master's and DMA degrees from the Juilliard School and also earned degrees from the Curtis Institute of Music and Manhattan School of Music, and was awarded a Fulbright grant to study fortepiano in the Netherlands. In addition, Audrey is on the honorary board at Anselmo Academy of Music and the Arts, and this platform is dedicated to artists, musicians, pedagogues, composers who give their name in support of Anselmo Academy mission. Dr. Axinn is on the faculty at the Juilliard School, Mannes School of Music, and Manhattan School of Music, teaching multiple performance and performance practice courses, as well as collaborative piano majors. She's also teaching a hybrid course at the Tianjin Juilliard School on Baroque dance and Bach suites and partitas. She was interim director of chamber music at the Juilliard School during the 2023-24 academic year and served for 3 years as Associate Dean of Academic and Student Affairs at the Tianjin Juilliard School in China, where she also taught collaborative piano. Dr. Axinn was also the Assistant Dean at Manus. Audrey is a co-founder and co-director of Academy of Fortepiano Performance, a summer workshop dedicated to the exploration of performing Baroque, classical, and romantic repertoire on keyboards closely matching the time period and geographical regions of musical works. This workshop, located at Catskill Mountains Foundation in Hunter, New York, and guest artists have included Robert Levine, Malcolm Wilson, Alexei Lubimov, Pierre Goy, Sandra Rosenblum, and others. Audrey has been a frequent guest instructor at Beijing Central Conservatory, as well as making appearances at Shanghai Conservatory, China Conservatory, Hong Kong Academy of the Arts, and multiple Taiwanese universities. In the West, she has performed master classes at the Curtis Institute of Music, New England Conservatory, Oberlin Conservatory, Smith College, Cornell University, the Koninklijk Conservatorium, I assume that's in the Netherlands, and many other institutions. Wonderful. Next, we're going to play a couple of clips we put together. These are teaching videos by Audrey of Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, Opus 27, number 2 in C sharp minor, and Pathetic Sonata, Opus 13 in C minor. Take a look.
Bringing into your version of it certain timings and ideas about rubato that come out of the modern piano that is not creating this sound world. And so you certainly can do that. but I want to propose that you don't need them. You don't need to do those rubatos at the end of phrases or retards at the end of phrases so much, because what this is creating when you have both of these pedals engaged is so atmospheric and so delicate and precious and smooth that those things sort of interrupt, I think. So I'll show you what I mean. So I don't know, it's really going to be a question of your choice, and it would be different. It'll be different on a Steinway, but if you're going to explore it here, it could be interesting to explore it in this way where we're trying to create something that to me feels hypnotic, and I think that the interruptions of those rubatos, of those retards, kind of like if I was starting to feel kind of like I was being transported, that brings me right back down to earth. So I don't. That's just it's a subjective opinion. But I just want to. But I'd love for you to try it. It's just like a thought exercise. There's much on these instruments. There's very little between you and the string, and the keys are so sensitive that every teeny tiny little difference in touch and speed and angle and how much weight and force used, it has an oversized effect on the sound and the touch, because the modern piano can take a little bit of weight. This instrument, there's barely, that's the key to. So it's I think it's a thought thing, but I found it to be very effective. To really think it's almost like I'm putting my finger on the string. It's almost like I'm a string player. And that really, I think, has an effect on the sensitivity of touch. As you push down the key, try it one more time, and imagine that you're not pushing down a key, you're touching the string. And of course, even on a modern Steinway, you are touching you're setting in motion something that touches the string. But here, there's much less between your finger and the string. What I love about what just happened is that I just felt like your listening was happening in a totally different plane than before. Like you're listening through the rack,
right?
And that is such a big that you just for me you just entered into this sound world. Like even if you're playing the third movement of this sonata, we're still listening. There's a lot going on in the third movement, but still we're listening in that type of way, and it's the range of, even though this instrument probably, if you measure the decibels, can't produce as much sound as a big Steinway playing Rachmaninoff or something, but nonetheless, the range of sound is even bigger than a modern piano, almost, because it can get that soft. And when it's loud, it's, because of this sharp articulation, it's very, very, it's jolting. It's so forceful. So there's a huge range of not only volume, but also just kind of from incredibly misty and magical and atmospheric to all out, like the apocalypse is coming and the horses. It's like, it's really intense. And you've got there's a lot to work with, and you just did a really good job of exploring the very delicate part of the range. About the Pathétique as an example, is that it's a really great example of what forte piano means. So it's FP, not the instrument, but FP as a symbol, because the decay of this instrument is so quick, the amplitude of the sound diminishing is so much faster than a modern piano, that the amount of time it takes to go from forte to piano is tempo.
Right.
So it's right in tempo. You can't do that on a modern piano either, because if you use all, I didn't create as much sound as quite as I wanted, but if I create the biggest sound that this instrument can make, it's still going to die. Not, it might take a hair longer than you actually want for your tempo, but it's close enough to really work. There it is. That's the biggest sound I can make. It's in tempo. So the magic here is the decay. And I don't do anything to make that happen. It's just what the piano does. All I'm doing is not getting in the way of it by raising the dampers.
Fantastic. I really found your teaching, Audrey, very inspiring and eye-opening, and you have a lot of energy to pass on, which I think is fantastic. So now we are moving to a dialogue section of our broadcast. I sent Audrey some questions, and so. First question. Tell us about your path as a pianist and fortepianist, and share your journey, teachers, mentors. How did you arrive to where you are today?
Thank you again for having me. I'll try to answer that. It's a big question. I started playing piano on my dad's lap in diapers. I think I was one. There are photos, and I loved piano. I made up songs. I have perfect pitch, so I could, whatever I heard on TV, I could play it back, figure out chords. I remember vividly that figuring out chords. I didn't know what to call them, but the function was, working. And I started taking lessons, I think at age 4, I think. And then that teacher wanted me to practice, and I didn't want to practice, so I quit for about 6 months. We found another teacher. I think I started up again at 6. And that teacher I remember very well, Paul Sheftel, because I stayed with him for about 9 years. And Paul is still where he's still in his studio, recording all the Well-Tempered Clavier right now. And he's one of the most just generous and gentle souls I've ever known. Really, I was so lucky to spend all that time with him. The corniest sense of humor you can imagine, but funny, still funny to me now, really hysterically funny when I was a kid. Ice cream parties and endless support and enthusiasm, just a wonderful teacher. As I started to get more serious, I applied to Manhattan School of Music's prep division. And what I remember about that audition is finishing, and I hadn't been on a pre-professional track, so I was, scales, arpeggios. I wasn't really ready for the audition. But I remember walking through the lobby, exiting. I was 15, and having this man with a very funny accent to me at the time running after me, saying, "Wait, wait, wait," as I was trying to leave, saying, and he said, "My name is Solomon Mikovsky. Have you," I can't do his accent. He said, did you write his teacher's name down on your application form? And I said, no, I don't know any of the teachers here. And he said, good. Then you go home and you call them and you tell them to write my name down. I want to teach you. Okay. So that was Solomon. And then I worked with him for the two years of high school, and I went to MSM also as a college student. And what became clear working with Solomon was that my heart, especially at the time, was in playing with other people, much to his maybe slight frustration. I spent most of my time learning violin and cello sonatas and piano trios, and I was less enthusiastic about really practicing the solo stuff the way I should have. So, but he got it at one point. You know, I was really deep into that, and there was one maybe about 3 years in, he caught me accompanying a cellist at a concerto competition at school, and I remember he came up to me afterwards and he said, "Oh, I see. This is what you're meant to do." And it really was at the time. I adored it. I love the sound of strings with piano. I love the repertoire. I love the discussion, the collaboration. I loved every bit of it. And I moved on from when I graduated. I went to Curtis, and the time they had a collaborative piano program. They don't right now, I don't believe, but they did then. And I studied with someone named Vladimir Sokolov, who was a very imposing and slightly scary teacher to me at the time. And at Curtis, I can't honestly say, I should say that for me, the big pianistic challenge has always been that I have extremely small hands. I think they're probably about the size of your average 9-year-old, maybe. And so ideally, in a perfect world, I would have found a teacher early on who could really help me with that. But I was a little bit on my own with that, because none of these teachers had hands like mine. You know, everybody had big hands. But so Vladimir Sokolov, I can't honestly say that it was so helpful, the lessons. I'm sorry, Vladimir, but what was incredibly helpful about being at Curtis was just the extraordinary level of everything I heard all around me. The students were just, the playing is outrageously good. It was outrageously good, and to play with these people, I had to match them in level. So there was a big jump. I mean, I had always been playing catch up, trying to be where I should be in terms of level. And at Curtis, I just practiced my tail off to get there, because I really had to play, as you know, I had to match the incredible players I was playing with. I continued from there to Juilliard, studied with Margot Garrett and Samuel Sanders, and they terrific instruction. But what was really, I think, the pivotal thing for me that happened was that Sam, I don't know, he saw something, and he started sending me clients when he was too busy to do something. I was in my early 20s, and sometimes the phone would ring and it would be somebody, you know, that I had grown up watching on stage, you know, somebody I would be very excited to get a phone call from. And usually it wasn't a recital. Usually they wanted me to rehearse with them, which was still incredibly instructive. And so I got to play concerto reductions with some very famous people. And every once in a while, we even got, you know, a little concert that I got to do with them. And Sam also asked me to teach for him, without getting into it too much. He had a very serious medical issue with his heart, and he was often not able to teach. He was having treatments, or when that wasn't the case, he was very often on tour, because he had more work really than any collaborative pianist in the country for decades, and he was playing with Yitzhak Perlman and Jesse Norman and so many others. And so between his health issues and all of the incredible playing he was doing, I was teaching a lot. And I was a Juilliard student. I was in the master's program, then subsequently the doctoral program, and I was teaching other Juilliard students. And that was an amazing opportunity where I realized how much I love teaching. I'll just throw, I know this is going on too long, but just a couple more. Then Fortepiano happened. I'd been interested for a long time, but I was I was a collaborative pianist. But I was interested because from the time I was a child, I loved playing Mozart more than anything. And Haydn, Beethoven, Schubert, of course, as well. And Chopin and Franck. I mean, many favorite composers at any given time, but Mozart was the constant. And I was always curious about what it was like to hear play Mozart on a Mozart piano. When I had finished the coursework for the doctorate at the end of that second year in the program, I got from somewhere Malcolm Bilson's phone number. He is the pioneer forte pianist in this country, and he has taught forever, for a very long time up in Cornell University in Ithaca. I called him and I just said who I was, that I'd never touched a forte piano, but I was interested. And he basically said, "Come on up." So I found an empty frat house that was renting rooms on campus, and I borrowed my parents' car and I drove up to Cornell, and I spent 8 days taking a very long lesson every morning with Malcolm. And he'd given me the key to a practice studio with a forte piano. I in the afternoon, because it's Ithaca in June or May when it's gorgeous and there are waterfalls. I went, hiking waterfalls in the afternoon, and then in the evenings I practiced till late, and then rinse and repeat. Did it the next day for 8 days, and Malcolm would show me, demonstrate, and he would bark questions at me constantly. Why is this quarter shorter than that quarter? Why does Beethoven feel it's necessary to put a staccato dot on that note? Isn't it short anyway? Wouldn't any sensible musician know to shorten it? It's the Socratic method, and um, it got my head, thinking about these things. And he was throwing treatises at me, and read Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, read Turk, and anyway, I remember driving home vividly, the long drive, and the whole time thinking, well, now I know what I'm going to do. Like this is clearly the next thing that I need to do. I just have to figure out how to do it. But I can't just say that was an interesting experience and move on. This is what I'm going to be really, really studying for who knows how long. And it's, 25, 30 years later, and I'm still studying it all day, well into the wee hours. I find it endlessly fascinating. There's two more people I must mention. Well, of course, then I got a Fulbright. I went to Holland, studied with some wonderful people there, but I'm actually going to jump and say that because of the small hands, in large part, it was always a struggle for me to navigate big repertoire, especially. And as around that time that I was getting very into forte piano, I was also starting to develop some pain in my elbow, and I was looking for help, and it was actually Yocheved Kaplinsky, the chair of the piano department at Juilliard, who connected me to a colleague of hers, who she said, if somebody can help you, this is the person. Her name is Zita Zohar, and I've got to say, and again, another one of those life-changing things. Zita completely changed my life as a pianist. I don't really even have the words, but she just uh, is I've never encountered anyone with that type of intuitive and also intellectual understanding of piano technique, how the body works, how to play in a way where you're not creating countertension. It completely changed my approach to the piano. Or even more impressive than that, it didn't she figured out what I was doing that was fine to keep, and then what needed to change, and how it was a long journey. I was not the easiest. It's not that I didn't want the help, but it's just not easy to do it. It's not easy to make these changes. It was it was many years. But I can really say that, I get to teach a lot of really talented students, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And some of them, a lot of the work we do is very technical, and some of them come to me for that now, and it's because of Zita. It's not, I didn't make any of this stuff up. It's what I learned and absorbed and made my own. And it's just that's what one of the things I love about what we do. This chain of knowledge that gets passed. Someone passes it to me, I get to pass it to somebody else. They will become teachers and pass it along, and there's something very, very lovely about that. And one last thanks of when you said mentors to Bearley Nugent. Bearley was the head of the chamber music department, the director of chamber music at Juilliard for more than 20 years, and she's the one who she's always looking to expand what people could experience through chamber music. So that you could be playing chamber music, but also be very engaged in community engagement or doing learning how to improvise. And so we didn't know each other, but she knew that I was the one who was like interested in forte piano. And Juilliard had obtained a forte piano, but I was the only one using it. And she gave me this opportunity a long time ago. Would I like to try to coach a couple of groups using forte piano? And I've been doing it ever since. It's been, 20 something years. And it's been really one of the big joys of my teaching career has been this work. So thank you, Barely.
Fantastic. So, do you teach on the modern piano at all, or is it primarily teaching referred to forte piano?
It's really half and half. I have, these two kind of avenues that are different than just solo piano. The collaborative piano, that's all on modern piano. The forte piano is obviously on a different instrument. I teach major lessons at Manus on collaborative piano. That's all on modern instrument. It's all regular piano. We're playing Brahms and Strauss and Debussy, and it's absolutely because I didn't abandon any of that when I became fascinated with forte pianos. And and a lot of my teaching, I mean, I teach classes in Brahms duos, Beethoven duos. That's all on modern piano. Really, so it's really a lot of I teach private lessons to some students on modern piano who are getting ready, especially for their auditions. And so the forte piano is happening in forte piano for pianists classes, chamber music coachings at Juilliard, and of course this workshop that we run. I run with my colleague Maria Rose. So it's both. It's very much both.
And so tell us, those of us who don't know what fortepiano is, what is it?
Hmm. Well, forte piano, to get wonky on you, is the word we use for every type of piano that has a keyboard that has hammers in it, going back all the way to about 1700 when that was first starting to be experimented with, all the way up to about Rachmaninoff, all the way up till somewhere around 1878, 1880, when the Steinway piano model design became kind of the standard. I know Fazioli is tinkering with it a little bit, but that's a sort of new development for the last 100 plus years. The Steinway mechanism, that's been the piano, and the differences from Yamaha to Steinway to Baldwin to Kwai, there are little differences, but it's still all basically the same, can I say, machine. But forte pianos is everything before then. And there's no one forte piano. They were, I mean, even in the same city in the same year, the builders were trying all kinds of different things. But if you look at it as a big timeline, it's a little bit like what they used to show in museums when I was a kid of the evolution of man, from ape to human. We know now that that's not really accurate, and it's not really accurate with forte pianos either, but you can kind of use that as a generalization that they started um, with uh, with many similarities in sound to a harpsichord, but the mechanism was different. But they were small, they were thin strings, small hammers. It was, not necessarily a delicate instrument. It was what you just heard. It can make a lot of sound, but it's a much thinner instrument with a very, very quick attack and a very quick decay, and just a very different sound world. And what happened is the instruments kind of got bigger. The people wanted more keys, they wanted more range, and with that comes thicker frames, heavier hammers, thicker strings. They just kept getting bigger and louder. And without getting into the weeds too much, there's kind of a divergence that happens where there were two different types of mechanisms. And one of them is what became the modern piano. If you look at a diagram of a forte piano mechanism, even as far back as 1700, one of the very early ones by this builder we say is the first builder, last name was Cristofori. It looks very, very similar to a modern Steinway action. It really does. There's not much difference. But there was a whole nother way of building an action that really took off in the 1770s in what's now Austria. And that is the mechanism that we associate with most of Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven and Schubert. And that piano also got bigger and bigger. But mass production, the Industrial Revolution, kind of knocked it out as a competitor with these English pianos that were being made in factories that really became over more than 100 years became the modern piano. So we have the English pianos, we have the Viennese pianos. And you can really hear it when Haydn makes his trips to London, which he did twice, and he composes for piano in London. He's composing different texture music because he's composing for the English piano. And most of the time his chords have very like string quartet voicing, with intervals of at least a third, fourth, or usually a third or fourth in between. They're more open, and that sounds beautiful with the resonance of a Viennese forte piano. But on the English piano, you get the opening to the E flat Hoboken 50, yom, bom, bom, these big block chords. That's for the English piano because that type of resonance, those overtones sounded great on this different construction in England, the modern piano.
What about pedal?
Pedal is fascinating. That's what everybody finds. I wish I could demonstrate for you, but I'm not set up in the right room. But you heard it in the Moonlight clip. So Mozart's piano for most of his life had what's really a hand stop, kind of like an organ stop, that you would have to take your hand off the keyboard and pull it. And then all the dampers, usually all the dampers would go up, and it would be like Debussy, totally blurry until you push it back in. And these audiences had a much higher tolerance for blur. And also because the sound decays so quickly, even when the dampers are up, the decay happens more quickly. So that's why you can play the Moonlight without ever changing the pedal. Because it gets without ever changing the pedal. Yeah. Because it gets blurry, but it takes a second and then it's clears. I showed that in the clip that you can go from E major to E minor in one beat and never change the pedal. But anyway, so it started with this hand stop, and I think like for people listening who know the Mozart D minor fantasy, you can play the whole first page, even on one of these pianos that still had the hand stop pedal, because that whole first page is just one big pedal, and then you push it in, and then you start the rest of the piece. But somewhere around, I'm forgetting the exact date, but somewhere around I think 17, maybe 82, if I'm not getting it wrong, a builder named Walter started putting in knee levers. So there's a knee lever, and your foot is on the ground, but you raise your knee, and that is how you raise the dampers. And so with that, you didn't have to take your hand off the keyboard anymore. So you could pedal more subtly. It wasn't all on or all off. You could start to do the type of pedaling that we do as modern pianists, where you do pedal to enhance legato or to help you to get from one place on the piano keyboard to another without a gap. And Beethoven grew up playing that type of piano with a knee lever, a Walter piano. And consequently, he was a great pedaler, like everybody who writes about his playing, who heard him say that, he had incredible legato, but also that he, frankly, maybe over pedaled. And sorry, one more. These Walter pianos also have another knee lever that we call the moderator. And that moves a piece of felt that's above the strings a little bit forward so that now the hammers hit through the felt, and it creates this intensely misty, very, very, it's not just pianissimo, it's a complete change of color. And so in the clip where I was demonstrating, and then my student Josh was demonstrating the Moonlight, we had both pedals. The dampers were raised, but also the moderator was engaged. And that's why the sound was so pastel, was so hazy.
My question is about ornamentation. So your specialty is what exactly?
Well,
As far as ornamentation goes,
the premise is that music from the time of Mozart, a lot of composers, especially Mozart, but to a certain extent Beethoven. You heard me doing some ornamenting in the Beethoven Bagatelle, and that's Opus 126. It's really late. That the music was composed, leaving some space for performers who were good at the art of ornamenting to add things, to change. We have so many examples of how Mozart and Beethoven did this in performance. There was in a concerto, I'm not just talking about the cadenzas, but just the beautiful lyrical piano solos and second movements of Mozart piano concertos. There's no way that he did those the same way every time. There's just no way. And a lot of them, think of the D minor concerto, 466, or there are many other examples as well, where the writing is deliberately rather skeletal, because the intention is that Mozart would be embroidering it. He would be embellishing it. He would be adding notes and scales and beautiful appoggiaturas. There's a very famous example of the D major concerto where forgive me, the Kerschel number, but you have a middle C that goes do, and then it jumps up 2 octaves, and then do. And, if you listen to recordings until not too long ago, that's what you would hear. It's just because that's what's on the page. But we understand, we have a very strong belief now that that's just, Mozart just said, that's the bottom note, that's the top note, now do something. And when he was the performer, of course, that was not an issue at all. Sometimes he had to write these things out. In a very famous example that he sent to his sister who was performing one of his concerti. And she said in a letter to him, it's beautiful, everyone loves it, but isn't there something missing in the second movement? And he knew exactly what she meant. And by the next post, he sent her a beautiful ornamented version of this melody. Um, but my contention is that you don't have to, just because we have that beautiful example, and of course it's fine to play it. It's in all the editions now. But the intention was, if he was going to do it, that's just one of a million ways he could have done it. So if we're playing it, we don't have to do what he did exactly, what he sent his sister. We can also make up our own. So it just evolved naturally for me, but I maybe partly from having played by ear so much as a child, but I'm not a composer, but I like this editing of the music. I love coming up with ornaments that I feel like for me, the goal is for you not to be able to, not to be sure whether that's something I invented or whether it was actually just in the piece. Um, and so I've been doing this for a long time. And this year I started teaching courses in it. I'm in week 3 now, this coming week at Juilliard, teaching a classical ornamentation class there. And I did it for the first time at Manus in the fall. And I'm still working out the kinks and how to teach. I don't even know if you can teach someone to do it, to be perfectly honest. But I think you can create an environment and lots of demonstration and give them tools, give people tools and lots of examples. And hopefully, they start ideas start coming. They try things. It's very trial and error. I was very pleased at the end of the class at Manus last semester that although when we started the semester, I found that people were they were having the blank page effect where they just like were frozen. Like, I don't know what to do. What do you mean add something? Add what? But by the end, quite a lot of them performed a movement with their own ornamentation, and some of those ornaments were really good, really nice. So I really believe that anyone who plays can do it. Um, and it's a wonderfully, I don't know, I love it. It's a very creative thing to do.
Yeah, very unique, profession and very unique way of, sharing your passion and also history, music history involved in your teaching, I'm sure, as well. Great. Moving on to the next question.
Ah,
Since you have in your bio, you have part of your professional life, you've been a part of administration at various universities. So my question is, what are the strengths and the weaknesses of music education in the United States?
yeah, that's a hard question because I will say that I think the strengths sometimes are the weaknesses. I'm sorry I don't mean to be cryptic, but I think that some of the strength is that we have is that our history of how we built music schools here were usually emigres, people escaping from wars, and so we had a lot of influx from Russia, a huge influx from Germany, also other European countries and other countries that are not European, especially in the recent last 40 or 50 years. This was not because of wars, but huge influx of musicians coming from Japan and Korea and China and other countries in Asia as well. So we're global. We're really global. And that's instead of, when I went to study in Holland, which I did, I got a very Dutch take on how to study music and how to perform music and the aesthetic. Um, my students who have studied in Vienna have told me something very similar about this incredible Viennese experience. I've lived and taught in China, and I've kind of gotten a taste. But in America, I don't think we don't get. I think the American take is global, and we're taking the best from so many different traditions. I mean, sometimes something sneaks in that's not the best, but we're getting really a lot of the best from a wide variety of approaches and aesthetics. And I think that's a strength. That's quite amazing. It's very different than most other places, I think, in the world. Um, and I think the other thing that really colors for me, I mean, this is kind of in a time period that there's a 10-year time period or 10 years of working as a dean over a 13-year period. So that was most of the time for 13 years. What I saw was a real dramatic shift in the mission of conservatories. And that has to do with people, the way that the music industry and concerts, the way that musicians make their career as performers was very rapidly changing. It had been changing for a long time, but it took the music schools a while to start to catch up. And it used to be a very closed business where if you didn't get a manager, you didn't really play concerts, unless, very small ones that you put on yourself. But basically, you needed to get in that door to have a career as a performer. And that's not true anymore. I mean, managers are still a very big force, and certainly the biggest concerts and the biggest halls, I'm sure those performers have management representation. But there are tons of extraordinarily fine artists out there performing all over the place without a manager. It's really opened up. But what's come along with that is the need to know how to manage yourself. You have to, if unless you're one of the few who doesn't need to because you're picked up and somebody's taking care of all of it for you. That's not most of us. Students today need almost the equivalent of an MBA as well as all of their musical training. They really need, it's an important skill, and the conservatories have been trying so hard to find ways to train all of the students to learn how to make their own careers, not just wait for it to happen, or not just by entering competitions. That is certainly an important route, but it's not the only route. Or even if you do win competitions, you may still need a lot of these skills. It's a lot to cram into a 4-year bachelor's and a 2-year master's. It's a lot of, because we still need all the basics. Then we need all of what we used to call business of music, which is now a whole curriculum. And then we also, all these wonderful things that are developing, like the area I'm so passionate about. Now there's the opportunity in many schools for people to really delve into historical performance and play secondary viola, take secondary Baroque viola lessons and do forte piano chamber music and take improvisation and an ornamentation. And also, what about jazz? There's crossover with jazz. There's so many avenues and things that are on offer. And I think it's a strength, but it also poses a lot of challenges to students and to administrations. Just how do you fit all of that into one building? And how do you fit it all into requirements? And how do the students get to taste all these things without getting so overwhelmed with just so much to do that they miss out on some basics? So I think that's my assessment of where we are now. It's an abundance of riches, and that's a strength, but with it comes challenges. I'm not going to call it a weakness, but I think it's a challenge.
Wonderful answer. Next, please tell us about your summer festival.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, this is my happy place. Academy of Forte Piano Performance, AFP. So we are in residence at this incredible facility. We are so lucky in Hunter, New York, in the Catskills in the beautiful mountains. And it's called Catskill Mountain Foundation. And it's this extraordinary facility with the most comfortable rooms. They're hotel rooms, private baths. I mean, it's amazing. Delicious food. And it houses a piano museum. And the Piano Museum is started off as the collection of showing the history of American pianos. But we've been there now for 8 years and or longer even. And anyway, the people who run this facility, this foundation, it's a big arts presenting foundation, the biggest one in the Catskill Mountains. And they present like 300 different types of performances per year, puppet shows and and operas and dramas and Shakespeare. It never ceramics. It never stops. And they're so committed to what they do and so lovely. And we've collaborated with them and on expanding the collection to include the pianos that the students and us and performers want to use the most. The pianos that we associate with Mozart and Beethoven and Schubert and Schumann, and many other composers. And so now the collection has really become a really interesting collection. And so I bring up my pianos. My colleague Maria brings her pianos. Our wonderful colleague Andrew Willis brings some pianos with him. So we have in the end, maybe 20 odd pianos. I don't mean that they're odd, 20 something pianos that are scattered all over these halls and rooms and the museum itself. And we do nothing all day but play on these pianos and talk about it. It's just nonstop lessons. In the evening, we all get together and play for each other and just create think tanks and conversations. And we have concerts, we have master classes, we have lectures coming in. Some years we do an add-on of chamber music. One time we did an add-on of songs using these instruments with singers. This year we run from May 31st to June, I think 7th or 8th, and it's just piano. It's just no distractions. It's just piano. There's a big concert. There's a faculty concert in the beginning, a big student concert at the end. And we really do. I mean, the students are sometimes at it till 2 in the morning practicing. We're holding open classes where people play and we just think about and talk about the music together till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It's a big intensive. It's really wonderful.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Next question. Talk about your hobbies or habits. What would I be surprised to find out about you?
Yeah, I've been dreading this question. So I used to have a lot of hobbies, and I have to say that I teach so much now that there's just no, that you get narrower and narrower, which I regret. But I will say that I swim almost every morning. That's a new habit. It's been going on for about a year and a half, and I have to, especially since it's been so cold, I have to just my mantra in the morning is I'm getting ready is don't think about it, just do it. Don't think. Just walk out the door. Just get to this pool. Once I'm actually in the pool, I'm always glad that I made it. But it's hard to get out of bed, hard to get out of the apartment. Um, I until this year, I've been so busy creating courses this year that I'm off of my reading, but I'm an avid reader. I'm usually always in at least 2 novels. I look forward to getting back to that again. I love to hike. I love climbing mountains. I love traveling. I have very favorite spots, especially there's one in England where I just go and I climb the hills and sit on the top. And that's again a really happy place. I was able to get there with a good friend last July. So grateful to be there. It's where that's where if I could I would go every month. I really need that place. But in general, I love hiking. I like being in nature a lot. And in the city that's challenging. Um, I don't know. Other than that, my hobbies, I mean, I do, oh, Feldenkrais. That's not really a hobby, but I think it's worth mentioning. I really love and have such a deep curiosity and interest in Feldenkrais. I don't know if everybody's heard of it, but it's this very interesting thing that you do that people usually say it's like Alexander technique, and it certainly can be helpful in the same way. But it's this the teacher will take you through in like a 40 or 50 minutes, all these little steps of just doing something like raise your right shoulder a little bit, and then you add to it, and then you add, well, look to the left as you raise your right shoulder. Okay, look up as you. I can't really. It sounds like nothing, but what it does is it kind of rewires you neurologically, and it teaches you to move, which is so important for piano technique, to move in a way that is really coherent in the whole body, and not to use not to use the wrong muscles to do something, but to really use the muscles that are intended for the movement you're about to make, and to not make any movements bigger than they need to be. I found that to be one of the really life-changing things for piano playing. So I try to do a Feldenkrais at least a couple times a week, a lesson. They're really good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all your wonderful answers and sharing your life path. Next, we have another clip, which is a two-piano Mozart Sonata K448 in D. Take a look.
And just not holding lengths, note lengths all the way through everything, like quarter notes unless it has a marking on it. Or
That's good. Okay, can I sit for a second? That is good. That
you also find the gestures. It's a fanfare.
Wonderful. And next we'll have a picture gallery where Audrey shared with us some of her pictures of her colleagues and from different events. So let's get that going, please.
Should I explain? Or you think that's
Yeah, please.
That's the workshop. That's Richard Hester sitting at the piano. He's a wonderful builder and technician, and he's showing us. We pulled out the keyboard, and he's showing us how to do repairs and how the piano really works. That's at the workshop. That was our first year, I think. And this is also from the Fortepiano workshop, Catskill Mountain. This is after the final concert. I don't know, maybe last year. Oh, this is last year, yes, because I see the twins with the yes in the back. So yeah, this is just we just happy place. We're done. We all feel good. And this is in Shanghai. This is not long after I'd arrived in China, and my very kind boss Wei He invited me to join him at a chamber music workshop festival in Shanghai, where groups from all 13 schools in China, music schools, everybody they sent their best groups, and there was concerts and master classes. I was giving this group a master class, I think, on the Schubert Trout Quintet, if I'm not mistaken. And that's just, well, one of my former students who's now a an award-winning documentary film director, but Sunny. But she also is a great photographer. And I needed headshots when I was getting ready to go to Tianjin. They needed something for the website. So we did some headshots. That's all that is.
Beautiful.
This is my Pianist. Sorry, you can see this is obviously during the pandemic. This is my old apartment too, but this is my collaborative piano studio from probably, I think, 2017, if I had to make a guess. And I invited them over right as winter break was starting, and we decorated a tree and we had some sushi, and yeah, anyway, everyone's wearing masks. But that was my studio with my students. And this is in China, just as I was getting ready after, the 3 years to come home. This is actually the first class, this will be the first graduating class of the Tianjin Juilliard School. And it was very sweet. They threw me a party with a cake, and they put a crown on my head. It was very sweet.
Fantastic. And we have a last clip of Audrey's teaching, which is trio, Beethoven Trio, Opus 11 in B flat. Take a look.
It's the hairpins. There are so many the hairpins in this movement, I'm going to propose, are structural. They're not just a hairpin. Just look at all of the hairpins. And they happen in places that that determines the shape of the phrase. Like you get a lot of very, very tiny little phrases, which are basically nothing other than a hairpin. And in each one of them is a sound effect. And each one of them requires a bit of time and kind of like, again, the spotlight on them. Like they're the main thing happening is this sound effect. And that can't happen when you're leaning forward and pushing through it. Because it's like an energy ball. Like just imagine that, a hairpin is something that starts small and it glows, it expands, and then it contracts back. And so that's a time event as well as a volume event. So I want to just really, really draw your attention to all of these hairpin dynamics, and the hairpin, the hairpin shape and sound effect are really it's kind of like if he took a blank canvas and plopped all those things down and then added notes to them. Yeah. They're the structure. And that's what gets obscured with if the pulse is if not the pulse, but if the energy, the direction through the measures is too forward, because that's not the shape of a hairpin. So let's put that in mind. Let's try. It's not soft. See that it's not soft because
because what's about to happen is soft.
I see. Yeah.
Yes.
True, true,
Different music. Now longer. G, do, but still hairpin. A big, growing, expanding. And cut it. Now hold it. Because she's doing hairpins. Together. And let it go. Cute. Now it's your turn.
Fantastic, Audrey. So nice to reconnecting with you on Zoom and live on Facebook at Anselmo Academy. Thanks so much for a fantastic interview. And I've learned so much from you speaking and sharing your story. And thank you for joining us today. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Vera.
Bye.